Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. Johan Rupert, South Africa's richest man, is in Washington with President Cyril Ramaphosa for the meeting today with Donald Trump. That meeting is happening later at about 5 p.m. today in South African time. You should be looking out for it at about 5:30. So it's interesting because South Africa's richest man is going to meet South Africa's richest man, because Elon Musk is also going to be around this meeting and a factor in this meeting. And in fact, Elon Musk is actually Africa's richest man and perhaps Africa's richest man in history. But we would have to then factor in how much Musa Mansa was actually worth. So Rupert is in Washington with Ramaphosa to meet Trump. It's interesting dynamics to all of that. Let me start off by saying there are three reasons why I love Donald Trump. Three. I don't actually love Donald Trump, but there are three reasons that make me appreciate the man. Number one, Donald Trump is actually willing to try to honor his commitments to his electorate and to honor his political campaign manifesto. Typically, and I was a big Barack Obama fan, 2006 is when I started following Barack Obama, followed his run when he was running for president, even before he was captivating the world, even before Yes We Can was a buzzword. And I truly believed in what Barack Obama was selling. When he got into power, I was tracking because I read Dreams from My Father. I read The Audacity of Hope. I was tracking to see, are we going to accomplish the things that Barack Obama was saying that need to be accomplished? Unfortunately, Barack didn't deliver on the promises. And in fact, he also did something that made me conflicted about his standing in my personal rankings because of what happened in Libya. The orchestration of the fall of Gaddafi by France and by America is one of the things that really damaged Africa and actually caused a variety of issues such as the rise in xenophobia and Afrophobia in Europe, because after Gaddafi fell, Libya basically was a porous state, and some people who were fleeing legitimate issues of conflict in various countries in Africa, you went through Libya on those boats and then caused the migrant boat crisis as it is looked at by the Europeans, which led to the rise of parties like the AFD, led to Brexit, led to what's the name again of that lady in Italy? It'll come back to me. Meloni. So if I look at Barack Obama's contribution in that regard, I have some strong skepticism of him. So he didn't deliver. But Donald Trump has tried to deliver everything that he promised people. He built the wall. He's tried to execute on various campaign promises that he made. And I begrudgingly respect him for that. So that's number one. Number two, and he's also showed what's possible in 100 days, in 200 days, because other politicians will tell you, no, we have to go slow, these things take time, etc., etc. Trump will try it. In one day, he'll try it. Executive order, executive order, executive order. Cancel this funding, cancel that funding, bring these refugees in, do all of these things. So bureaucracy has proven in the political sense to be full of people who are dragging their feet, not actually trying to execute what's possible to deliver their mandate. So Trump, you have to give him points for that. Number two, I like that Trump is like litmus paper. You know, in science, you use litmus paper to check the pH level of a particular, fluid. To say, okay, what is the pH level of this fluid? You put that litmus paper in there, it'll tell you pH, this, and then you know if it's at this level, it's alkaline. If it's at this level, it's acidic. Why do I say that? Trump has allowed us to see all of the racists, all of the extremists, all of the disinformation peddlers, all of the people who hate Africans, all of the people who love Africans, all of the people who are in between, all of the people who are dealers, the transactional people. He's like litmus paper. He will come in there, and expose everybody. And then if you just hold that paper up, you can see. So think about how so many right-wing movements have been emboldened because Trump is in office. They actually act like he'll be in office forever and ever, amen, right? But they're acting and rushing, and they're so gleeful, even on social media. Even some of the stuff that Elon Musk has been doing has been because he was emboldened by the fact that he has Donald Trump in his room. Sometimes when you know a big bouncer and you're walking with a big guy in a delegation, you begin to talk out of the side of your mouth and expose what you think and what you believe. I love that he has been able to do that. Number 3, I love that Trump has exposed the power brokers behind the scenes and how power sometimes functions. People have started coming out to the front who typically would not come to the front. You know, in the African streets, and I don't think it's an old African proverb, but we have a saying in the African streets, the digital streets. We say, beat the dog till the owner comes out. Beat the dog till the owner comes out. Trump has been beating the dog. Day 1, he cancelled refugee program. Day 1, same day, right? He then cancelled various funding. Then he instituted the, what is this thing called? That refugee program declaration for the Afrikaners. Then he has been saying consistently, South Africa, bad things are happening in South Africa. A, B, C, D, E, F, G is meeting the South African president today. But the South African president couldn't go alone. He had to go with Rupert, South Africa's richest man, one of the most powerful men in South Africa. And for me, I'm happy that this happened. I'll tell you why, but I must be complete. Tell you reasons I don't love Donald Trump. Donald Trump uses what I would call dark side popularity. He knows the dark heart of his constituency and he exploits it. When he got onto the scene in a real way, he started criticizing the Central Park Five, accusing them of crimes that they were exonerated for later. That for me was something that it just told me the nature of the guy. Number 2, the Barack Obama birth certificate. That in and of itself was him understanding that there's a large part of the Republican Party that genuinely dislikes Barack Obama because of his skin tone. And he exploited that second name, Barack Hussein Obama. Where's the birth certificate? All of that was something that showed me that this guy, he's using dark side populism. And then his comments about Mexico is not sending us its finest people. It's sending us criminals. It's sending us this. He was tapping into the xenophobic sentiment which exists in America, in deep America. People who have those kind of views, who don't want America to be a melting pot, who view America as a country which is supposed to be a country for white men. Trump understood all of that. He played into that. I don't like that. I don't like the people around him, because when I look at the people around him, I begin to see many people who hate me for what I look like, who hate people like me for what we look like, and support some of the worst things that have happened in history to people who look like me and to Africa. So there are many things I dislike. I dislike also that Thatcherite, Reagan political framework, because it has led to poverty and deprivation around the world. And it has made a few people economic winners. So I just thought, let me be complete. But let's go to the Rupert side of the equation. 3 questions. Is Rupert's presence necessary? Second, is Rupert's presence legitimate? And number 3, is it going to be effective? Is Rupert's presence in this Washington delegation necessary? Unfortunately, it is. Why do I say unfortunately it is? Donald Trump doesn't seem to take people who are not at his level seriously. And his level in his worldview is people who are billionaires, people who look like him. Old white men have the best chance of persuading Donald Trump. They do. Rupert is somebody who has a relationship with Trump. He's played golf with Trump. He has been talking with Donald Trump on the phone. Do you remember when Trump won the election, we heard reports that Johan Rupert organized the phone call for Cyril Ramaphosa between himself and Trump. So Rupert is going to be necessary in the room. He's South Africa's richest man. He's a billionaire. He has a relationship with Trump. All of those things will allow him to be able to reach Trump in ways that President Ramaphosa would not be able to do by himself. John Steenhuisen is not a factor when it comes to Trump. He doesn't know this guy. He doesn't have a relationship with the guy. He's not wealthy. There's nothing that Trump will respect when it comes to John Steenhuisen, but he will respect. He will respect Rupert. He will understand what Rupert's family has achieved over the last 60, 80, 90 years in South Africa. So that's why his presence in the room is necessary, right? I think I just want to make a comment quickly about what else seems to be driving what's happening here. Elon Musk wants Starlink to operate in South Africa, his satellite internet service provider. He wants it to be able to operate. Rupert is an internet service provider. In case you didn't know, he owns Dark Fiber Africa. He owns Vumatel. He also was one of the people who was instrumental in bringing Vodacom into South Africa. Remgro, when it was still called Rembrandt, was a partner for bringing Vodafone and Vodacom into South Africa. I don't know if you knew that. So Rupert has a long history in the telecommunications space. Then you've got MTN, where President Cyril Ramaphosa actually, when he was benefiting from a variety of BEE transactions, he also was a big player in MTN. So there's a connection between MTN and Ramaphosa. There's a connection between Vodacom and Rupert. There's a connection between Vumatel. There's a connection between Dark Fiber Africa, all of this under Maziv and all of that. And by the way, Maziv, which is the mother company that is, I think, owning these other brands, all owned by Rupert, by the way, is trying to do a merger right now with Vodacom. So they have an interest to try to manage this Elon Musk situation, because Starlink is going to come in and disrupt MTN and Vodacom. It's going to disrupt them. And they're making a lot of money off providing, but it's also going to providing internet. It's also going to disrupt Vumatel. If people start buying Starlink, they won't need to be paying all of these large contracts. So I think Elon Musk is trying to force South Africa to take Starlink. And now you have the owners of telecommunications networks in South Africa, MTN and Vodacom and also Vumatel, now saying we need to go meet this dude, Trump. We need to deal with the situation and we need to make sure that we can kill this thing before it goes any further. This is basically a mafia version of the meeting of the families, if you will, so that a deal can be made. It looks like they're going to try to make a deal to get Starlink in, and maybe they'll figure out how to deal the BEE things, and maybe they may not. But this is why it seems to me, from the Rupert presence or the Rupert side of the equation or South African business side of the equation, why Rupert's presence there is necessary in the room, right? So it's a relationship necessity, but also like the business interest necessity from his side of the equation. So that's the necessity point. Now, the legitimacy point. Is Rupert's presence in that room legitimate? Remember the African saying, beat the dog till the owner comes out. I don't think it's necessarily legitimate for him to be in the room, but I think it's informative because Rupert is not an elected official. Rupert has never occupied a political position in South Africa. He does not account to the public, but he is going to negotiate with the president of America on behalf of the public. The reason why you have democracy is so that those with power exercise that power on behalf of those who gave them that power and can account to those who gave them that power through parliament. The president, the ministers, they go to parliament, they respond to questions, written questions, oral questions, and then the public can decide periodically if they are happy with the performance of those people. And if they are not, vote them out. You cannot vote out Rupert. He's a billionaire. You cannot remove Rupert. He's a billionaire. So there are questions around his legitimacy. Those who govern do so with the consent of the governed. That is the principle of democracy. So I don't think it's legitimate. I don't really think it's legitimate. And also there's a bigger question around who controls South Africa. And here I think Rupert's presence does expose quite nicely what's been happening behind the scenes. Because in this book here, Stellenbosch Mafia, Rupert actually was denying and downsizing in chapter 3 his relationship with Ramaphosa. I think it's chapter 3. Let me just make sure. Yes, it is chapter 3, the monopoly white capitalists, right here. In this book, he's kind of downplaying his relationship with Ramaphosa, but in the same chapter, they're talking about how Rupert operates behind the scenes. I never bought into the narrative that Rupert is still not in conversation with Ramaphosa and is still not influential. I just think that he stepped a little bit further away because he knew that if he's trying to be like vocal, he's going to actually overexpose his involvement. Also, I was aware at a certain point that Rupert is one of the biggest beneficiaries of what has been happening under the rapid, what's this thing called? Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program, the REIPPPP. You down with IPP? Yeah, you know me. He's one of the biggest beneficiaries through the Energy Exchange of Southern Africa. The other biggest beneficiary is Patrice Motsepe. And I don't know if you knew this. Patrice Motsepe owns 37% of Blue Bulls, which owns that rugby team, right? And so does Rupert, 37%. Two biggest beneficiaries of the IPP program, Renewable Energy Program, South African beneficiaries, Patrice Motsepe, Rupert. Are you beginning to do the thing that Pravin Gordhan said is what we need to do to understand how politics works behind the scenes, connecting the dots? So his presence there in Washington, I think now helps us understand what role he has been playing behind the scenes in South African politics, that he may very well have been one of the biggest backers of President Ramaphosa, and very well may have been one of the biggest influencers behind the scenes. So gaslighting is defined as blaming the other person for the very thing that you are doing and making them feel like they're going crazy for actually, believing that that you were behaving like that. Right? Some version of that kind of I'm simplifying it quite significantly. I think there's been a lot of gaslighting around who's trying to control the South African economy and who's trying to benefit from the South African economy, or who's benefiting in real terms. So legitimacy, I think, not legitimate, but quite informative, right? And then now people can think about whether they are comfortable with his presence in the corridors of power in this way, a presence that he was downplaying in the book. Now, in terms of, is it going to be effective? That's an open-ended question. We'll get that answer at 5 p.m. today. Because on the plus side, Rupert is a billionaire. He's played golf with Trump. He has a relationship with Trump. On the negative side, Elon is a bigger billionaire. And he's working in Trump's administration through that Department of Government Efficiency, although he's now stepping back because you can't work for longer than 120 days in an official role like that, of that nature, without being confirmed through Senate, et cetera, and going through serious processes. So he cannot be an official member of Trump's cabinet. He was Trump's biggest donor. But Elon also has been falling out of favor with Trump because he lost a local election which he was funding, and also because, he's not as popular with some of the Republican base and some of the American people. And Trump is very sensitive about his image and global perceptions. But Trump also put Teslas at the White House and advertised for them. So it may very well be exaggerated that Elon is losing influence with Trump. So if Elon is not a factor, it may very well be that Trump can be offered a variety of things that will make him comfortable to back off and stop fighting South Africa. And then everyone will move on. And then they'll start talking about China or whatever. There's so many things happening in the world which connect back to Trump and that his administration is working on. He doesn't necessarily have to fight this fight to the bitter end. And Trump is always looking for a deal. And that's a positive around whether or not it may work to have Rupert in the room. There are two ways of looking at ethics. One is a consequentialist way, where you say an action is morally justified if the consequences are agreeable, right? So another way of looking at it is what is known as a categorical imperative, where you say whatever action is taken must be justified in principle, not because of the outcomes, right? So the consequentialist says the ends justifies the means. The categorical imperative says no, it doesn't, right? That the principle supersedes any outcomes. So on the categorical side, you have what is known as utilitarianism, not categorical side. On the consequentialist side, you have what is known as utilitarianism, greatest good for the greatest number. So those people look at, and that comes from Jeremy Bentham and a variety of philosophers. So those people look at whatever happens, did we get the greatest good for the greatest number? And that is what will justify the action. So having Rupert in the room, even if it's not democratic, if it helps South Africa, those people will say that justifies it. But the people who are on the Kantian side of moral philosophy, who work on the categorical imperative, will say it's always wrong to have an unelected representative doing democratic functions for a democracy, which is based on those who govern doing so with the consent of the governed. But President Ramaphosa is somebody who was elected to parliament, then elected by parliament to exercise this executive role. And if he thinks it's beneficial to the people who sent him, the ones who tumored him, then so be it. And that could be the principle and how the principle is justified. But I think interesting questions arise. And interesting things have happened here because Trump has showed us something, that Rupert has been playing a much bigger role in South Africa than he pretended to. And then if you go back to his father and the Menels and their funding of and founding of the Urban Foundation, which was this thing that they created to create a group of black middle-class professionals and a middle-class community. President Ramaphosa was part of that back in the days with the Menel family. Because the two big families that orchestrated the transition were the Oppenheimers and the Ruperts. And you can even get that information if you read that book, ANC Billionaires. But if you also read the book around the Broederbond, you also understand that these families have been working behind the scenes for a long time. And the Oppenheimers were actually still showing that they're involved because they were donating millions to different parties to prevent EFF and MK from even having a chance in the election. So I think Trump, because he is who he is, a litmus paper. He will expose the racists. He will expose the people who are working behind the scenes. He'll expose who the owners are. Interesting questions arise from that, and we're going to have conversations about this. And the South African media, I wonder if they will actually interview Rupert when he comes back about his role in all of this. I doubt it. But if they were really about accountability, speaking to power, they should. But Rupert owns, ENCA, and he has a strong relationship with entities like Power FM. When Mbuyiseni Ndlozi went, connect the dots. Let's talk in the comments. What do you think about all of this? Till the next one.